Today we're going to be looking at 12 value wide receivers that could help you out in your drafts this year. These are guys that are not exactly under the radar. These are guys you know about, but guys that could potentially pop off somewhere down the line. We're looking at mid-round picks. We're looking at late-round picks. We're looking at potential waiver wire candidates, but these are wide receivers you need to know about as we approach draft season or in your underdog fantasy drafts for those best ball leagues. Before we dig in, though, you need to click that subscribe button because I'm helping you get ready for the fantasy football season, your draft season, those drafts you're doing right now. I'm helping you build your dynasty teams and everything else. Click that button. Stop missing out. And we're going to start off with our first player today, T. Higgins. Wide receiver 27 off the board. Being drafted in round 4 in Underdog, ADP of 39.8. I think in traditional redraft, he's going to be a shade cheaper. And look at the spike weeks last year when he was healthy, right below me. This guy can be productive. This guy has upside. We're good to go for this year. The market's a little bit cheaper on him compared to years past. Years past, when he was healthy, good to go with the Bengals, you were paying up for him. Second round pick, third round pick. Now you're going to catch him round 4 or cheaper in traditional redraft leagues, getting an 80% route participation rate on the Cincinnati Bengals, one of the most prolific offenses in the NFL, getting over 6 targets per game, getting volume, getting targets downfield, 12.8 average depth of target. He's got upside. He can win you weeks. If this offense starts clicking, he's going to be clicking. And he's playing for that contract. He's playing for that money. T. Higgins is the value compared to previous seasons. George Pickins, wide receiver 28, round 4 draft capital on Underdog. Probably a shade cheaper in traditional redraft. Russell Wilson steps in. He loves to sling the deep ball. He did that to Cortland Sutton last year. George Pickens is probably going to be one of the top wide receivers in the league in air yards if he stays healthy throughout the season because Russ is going to push it downfield. Justin Fields is in. He's got a rapport with George Pickens from back in high school. They have chemistry together. This is a win-win situation with either quarterback. He's going to be spam targets. Over 6 targets per game last year. 95% route participation rate. Deontay Johnson's gone. He is gone. George Pickens is going to be a nightmare this year. He's going to be getting targets. He's going to be getting workload at wide receiver 28 at this price tag. ADP 40, possibly cheaper, more than likely so. You're going to get a good wide receiver 1 here with some upside that could be sneaky for you. Marquise Brown, he's even cheaper. He should not be this cheap. Wide receiver 32, round 5 draft capital, cheaper than that probably in traditional redraft unless the market smartens up. He's on the Chiefs, fast-paced offense. The ball's going to be flowing his way. They brought him in to get the deep targets. He's going to get good targets from Patrick Mahomes. He was productive last year with the Cardinals. He was productive with the Ravens. Now we're in a very good offense that's very efficient. Watch him light it up. Chris Godwin. And I want to bring him up because he's projected to be used more in the slot, more like in the Cooper Kupp role. And when he was getting a 70% slot rate or higher in previous years, that's when he was making money for you guys in fantasy. And then even when he was getting a 37% slot rate last year, he was still giving you some boom weeks, and his low-end weeks weren't too bad. And he was getting 7.8 targets per game. Almost a 25% target share. You're catching that with round 5 draft capital. That is top tier workload for a wide receiver. You want that, and he's going to get more work in the slot, making him more efficient. He had a 12.4 average depth of target last year. Expect that to decrease, but if he's going to be used more in the slot, I expect his volume to be good for him to get yards after the catch, use more around the goal line. I expect his numbers to increase. Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 44 in fantasy this year on Underdog. Round 7 draft capital. Dirt cheap. Look at Adam Thielen last year at the start of the season. He was blowing up, having good numbers, and then the back of the season when things cooled off, the numbers weren't too bad. There's targets to go around in this offense. This offense has a new offense installed that is going to be more pass heavy. They added some weapons to the offense. Bryce Young's going into year 2. Deontay Johnson with bad quarterback play was still decently productive, 11.7 points per game. But when you look at the chart down there, we're still hitting double digits in a lot of game. One wide receiver, 1 week, multiple wide receiver 2 performances. But we're going to be the guy here in Carolina. We're going to get our opportunity. He looked good in minicamp. He's been looking good in workouts. And this is a very cheap price tag comparing to what you paid in years past, because he's going to Carolina. People are soured on this landing spot, but this could be the place for him. Christian Watson. He's got the Will Fuller effect. You may want that, you may not. This is going to be your choice if you want an asset like this. But he can give you those boom weeks, potentially 30-point weeks, 25-point weeks. He can do that, and he can also get injured. He can also give you those low-point weeks. We see that in the chart. We've seen that over time. He can ball out. He can give you nothing. That being said, do you want an asset like this? But that's at wide receiver 45. And you're supposed to go heavy at wide receiver in the start of the draft. And a lot of people are going heavy at wide receiver at the start of their drafts. And if they're rounding out the back of their wide receiver depth chart in round 7, this is a good guy to have as a fill-in or a flex spot. A guy that can give you a 30-point game here and there throughout the season. You play the matchups, you see what happens. Christian Watson, are you in? Are you out? Curtis Samuel is flying under the radar right now. Wide receiver 50, dirt cheap. Round 8 draft capital means in traditional redraft, you're probably getting him cheaper. The Bills' offense is fast-paced. They like to push it downfield. Curtis Samuel, 4.3 speed. He's probably going to get a lot of those shorter targets. Look at the wide receiver depth chart there. They got a lot of guys that can stretch the field, some big-bodied guys that's good at the catch point. You got Khalil Shakur and company as well. You got Cam Coleman. Curtis Samuel's different. You can keep him around the line of scrimmage, get you yards after the catch, and you can also stretch him downfield. He's multifaceted. Last year with the Commanders, 5.8 targets per game, 58% route participation rate, a lower average depth of target. They saw that. It's not like they don't have these numbers. It's not like they don't know Curtis Samuel is good around the line of scrimmage. You can move him around like we saw at Ohio State, like we saw in Carolina, like we saw with the Commanders. We got speed to burn. So when the deep ball's not there, you need an outlet. You got Curtis Samuel. Probably going to have some pop-off weeks. During the season last year, we talked about him multiple times as a waiver wire pickup. Now we're with the Bills. We're in a better offense. The depth chart looks good for him to fit in. Look at the production last year from week to week. Maybe a player you want to look at when it's this cheap. Josh Palmer, wide receiver 54. And Keenan Allen and Mike Williams is gone. They're gone. We got Ladd McConkey. Quentin Johnson, if he keeps falling on his face, Josh Palmer's going to get a lot of targets. This might be a slower paced offense with Harbaugh there. It might be, but Herbert's still there. He can sling the rock. He's got a rapport with Herbert's. 16.5% target share. That could increase. 84.1 route participation rate. That's with him being nicked up too. That could increase. Josh Palmer, wide receiver 54. If you're still drafting wide receivers or you're looking for back-end wide receivers in this range of the draft, Josh Palmer could be a cheap option, a safer option, and you might be able to catch him rounds 10, 11, 12 in traditional redraft or a home league redraft because values are weird there. But on Underdog, round 9, because the money's saying, hey, he's going to be getting opportunity. The money is saying that right now. Brandon Cooks, wide receiver 57, round 10 draft capital. The thing about that, Michael Gallup's gone. They did not bring in any wide receivers of consequence. There's not much competition here in the offense. He's going to be getting targets. It should look more like it did on the back half of the season throughout the whole year if he's on the field, healthy, getting those targets. So you're going to get some double-digit PPR fantasy performances, some off and on wide receiver 2 production at a round 10 price tag, at a wide receiver 5 to wide receiver 6 price tag. If you're still drafting wide receivers in this part of the draft, I'm slamming running backs. So I'm not getting a lot of Brandon Cooks. That's just not really part of my strategy. But I am in a lot of drafts. I am diversifying. If I'm looking for wide receivers, I noticed that he could be getting more opportunity this year, more than 10 fantasy points per game. He could be landing around 12, 13, 14, something like that. It should look like more like weeks 12 to 18. And if it does, with down weeks and wide receiver 2 weeks, you're catching him at like wide receiver 6 value. Why not? But Dodson, you forgot about him. You forgot about him, but I got his production from the last 2 years. Remember his rookie season? He looked good. He was productive, but dealt with injuries. We came on this year, and the volume was weird. The wide receivers were spread out in targets. The volume went all over the place in the offense last year. We got a new quarterback. We got Jaden Daniels. We're going to be pushing the rock to the right spots. Curtis Samuel's gone. It's Dodson, Terry McLaurin and company as the veterans, as the incumbents on the wide receiver depth chart. He did receive an 85.7% route participation rate last year, so he was on the field running routes. He was on the outside. He was on the inside. Wide receiver 64 in ADP, round 12 draft capital. If Jaden Daniels hits, if he takes over this offense, starts slinging rocks all over the field, and that could be middle of the season, end of the season, Dodson could be a big benefactor of that because he's going to be on the field running routes. Good route runner, strong hands. This is a player that could exceed expectations that is going late in drafts. Marvin Mims, wide receiver 80, round 16 draft capital. So this could be the last pick of your draft in a traditional league, depending on how deep you're going in the rounds, but not heavily targeted. But that 15.5 average depth of target. What does that tell you? They used him as a deep ball threat last year. They had him run wind sprints, and they threw it deep. They closed their eyes. They let the rock go. Bo Nix and Zach Wilson, both young quarterbacks. It's very ambiguous, but he's going to be on the field running some routes. What's going to happen with him? Jerry Jeudy's gone. There's going to be more opportunity for him to get on the field. Training camp's going to be huge for him, but they liked him a lot. They did not have many draft picks in 2023, but they burned one on Marvin Mims. They used him periodically last year, but he was a rookie. You got Jerry Jeudy, you got Cortland Sutton. This offense, I do not expect it to be on fire, but Marvin Mims could be running routes, getting opportunity, could be some splash performances, and he's great for best ball, but also could be a guy that could catch fire with some deep targets, could be highly volatile. But Greg Dortch, wide receiver 89, round 18 draft capital, probably would be the last pick of your draft. He has been productive in spurts throughout his career. We got a rookie wide receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. Trey McBride's going to eat up targets. Rondell Moore's gone. They're already talking about Dortch in the press conferences. They're saying if he was a bigger wide receiver, he'd be one of the best in the league. But he is a very good route runner, creates separation, very dependable. We talked about him consistently in a lot of waiver wire videos. Greg Dortch has some upside in this offense because he's got a rapport to Kyler Murray. And if the downfield targets are not there, Greg Dortch will get them. Greg Dortch will get targets in bunches in certain games. He's a matchup player, but a guy that's probably going to be on waivers in your league that you might be looking to pick up sometime down the line. But those are 12 wide receivers that we're looking at as we approach draft season. Some of these guys are picking up off waivers. Weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, somewhere down the line. Some of these guys you want to draft late. Some of these guys you don't like, and we're going to talk about more players tomorrow. That's why you need to click that subscribe button, because we're going to give you those ideas. We're going to look at how these players can be strategized for your roster construction, how you want to play the game, whether it's here RB, late round QB, wide receiver heavy, whatever you want to do. It's all right here. I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.